Welcome to City Club of Portland's Friday Forum. I'm Oriana Maniera, a member of City Club's Forum Board and producer of today's program. For more than a century, City Club of Portland is where civic-minded people have come together to find solutions to our region's biggest challenges. Today, we are gathered in the Sentinel Hotel and are joined by thousands of people via X-Ray FM and the radio stations at 107.1 and 91.1 FM, KGW's website, Facebook feed and news app, and OpenSignal's community media television stations. We are incredibly grateful to all the work they do to bring Friday Forum to our community. In addition to City Club's valued media partners, our sponsors, volunteers, and staff enable us to put on Oregon's best civic programs week after week. I'd like to thank the AARP of Oregon, Avangrid Renewables, and SEIU 49 for their generous support of this and all of our Friday Forums this fall. I'd also like to thank Stand for Children Oregon for sponsoring today's program. Please join me in showing our appreciation to everyone who has made this event possible. In Oregon, as in many other states, Black students graduate at significantly lower rates than white students. Given Oregon's history of exclusion and of creating systemic barriers for people of color, Black folks in particular, it's clear that we as a state and a community must do better. Here at City Club, we exposed our implicit bias and had a teachable moment through the original title of the forum. The failure of Black students signals a troubling future for Oregon. This title put the blame on Black students instead of acknowledging the systemic barriers that stymie achievement and the obligation of our schools to lift up all students and pave the way for their success. This was our mistake. This is an important reminder that even as we work together to build a more equitable and inclusive City Club, our staff and volunteers must continue working every day to unlearn our individual and collective biases. This is an essential step toward coming together as a community in order to ensure that we achieve justice in education. Today, we're fortunate to have with us key leaders who are actively working to address the achievement gap for Black students and can speak to how all communities in Oregon must come together to seek solutions. Our panelists include Lisa Collins, the Director of Teaching and Learning at the PARKROSE School District. Lisa has experience in 3 large school districts and for more than 25 years has brought an equity lens to her work. Joe McPherson II is the President and CEO of Portland Opportunities Industrialization Center and Rosemary Anderson High School. He serves on many boards and committees and is the Vice President of the Executive Directors Association of the OIC of America. We also have Khalil Ladd, the co-founder of KairosPDX, a nonprofit charter school in the Portland School District dedicated to closing opportunity and achievement gaps for historically marginalized children. She is the chair of the Portland Community College Board of Directors and serves on the Early Learning Council of Oregon. Moderating our conversation today is JOYCE Harris, Manager of Community Outreach at Education Northwest. She co-founded the Black Educational Center and has taught hundreds of children throughout OMSI and Portland Public Schools. Before we welcome our panel, please allow me to introduce Ron Herndon, who has been the director of Albina Head Start since 1975. Ron served as president and board chair of the National Head Start Association from 1991 to 2013, advocating for low-income children and families across the country. He'll spend a few minutes sharing with us some history of the Black community in Portland. Please welcome Ron.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank the City Club for having this event and addressing this very, very important topic. I'm going to start as far back as only 1948 and looking at how Portland Public Schools has addressed the education of Black children in this country. I think all of us know, and if not know, suspect that it's not done very well, but some of the things I'm going to read to you are fairly graphic to give you an idea of what Black children faced in Portland Public Schools at a time when there were very few Black teachers, none, very few Black administrators, none. I'm reading from a book from Bill McClendon. If you don't know the name, he's the gentleman who started the Portland Observer back in the late 30s, early 40s, one of the top Black scholars in this country, and also was head of the education committee of the NAACP for many years when they were fighting against these abuses. This is from his book, Straight Ahead. If you've never picked it up, you really should. It's probably the best documentation of racism in Portland and in Oregon that you're going to find. In 1948, the Washington High School Assembly heard the school chorus sing a song containing the passage, quote, "Some folks say a nigger won't steal," end quote. 44 black students in attendance summarily walked out of the assembly. This matter was reported to the Urban League. Efforts were exerted by the League to have the school administration apologize publicly to the black students for this insulting and abrasive incident. Newspaper criticism which followed were leveled at the League for expressing its displeasure, then rather at the negligent school administration for permitting programs to take place that humiliated some of the students. This is a pattern that has not stopped. And I'll move very, very quickly. The first black teacher got hired in approximately 1952, Robert Ford. In the 70s, Portland Schools Board adopted a plan that destroyed, in my opinion, educational opportunities for black children. They took the primarily black schools in Albina, got rid of the upper grades, and forced black children to be bussed out. No other child in the history of Portland was forcibly bussed out of their community. Not only were they bussed, they were scattered. Oregonian had a Sunday article by a very well-respected reporter, her name was Huntley Collins, in which he was talking to a Portland school administrator about this plan. So why are you doing this? Quote, now this is in the late 1970s. "We don't want to have but 2 or 3 niggers in any classroom," end quote. That was in the Sunday Oregonian. So you begin to think about the foundation that this educational system is built upon. It is built upon attitudes like this. Yes, today people are a little bit more careful about what they say in public about black people. But in terms of the results of the programs that have been put in place, the end result of academic disparities is still the same as it was when it began. The black community rose up, fought against this busing program, fought against the disparities in expulsion suspensions, and overturned it. This is probably the only time in the history of Portland that a community group radically changed school policy, made them add grades back into the schools in the black community, made them commit to hiring, for the first time, black principals, black teachers. At that time, black teachers could not teach at schools in the black community. Policy was segregation. White teachers teach anywhere they want and numbers that they want, that was not segregation. So made it possible for black teachers to come back into those schools. Created Tubman Middle School. I'll close with this. These policies and these practices have created what we see today. Currently, the number of black teachers and administrators in Portland Public Schools is less than it was 6 years ago. Less than it was 6 years ago. So when you begin to look for signs of progress, you come up a little short. The only thing I believe that will change any of this will be all of you who are interested and concerned that you roll up your sleeves and you're determined to fight like hell to ensure that our children receive the education they deserve.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Where's Bobby Regan? Is she around? Okay. Oh, are you going to do some welcoming remarks? Okay, they've taken care of that. So how's everyone doing this afternoon? Everybody ready to fight like? Okay. So I am so happy to see so many people here. Some of you I've worked with as colleagues. Some of you I've taught, and it's, so let me start out. I taught Joe McFerrin how to read, and so all of the skills that he sees, you can know that that came from a loving school environment. And what we want to talk about today is something that is deeply troubling to so many of us because we see the impact of underachievement, lack of achievement, and just feeling disenfranchised in our students. So I want to start this off, first of all, by acknowledging the students who are in the room. I know we have Lincoln High School, we have Roosevelt High School. Who else is in the room? Go ahead and stand up. Stand up so they can see you. Stand up. All right. Thank you. If I missed your school name, call it out now. What school did I miss? North Clackamas. The Civic Scholars. Welcome. And I've asked the students to stand up and for us to acknowledge them because they are why we are here. Keep that in mind. We are here to make sure that these students are at the center of our policies, our practices, and our vision for their success. That's why we're here today. So I want to challenge each of you, as you hear these presentations, this conversation, think about what you are currently doing, and think about whether or not it's being effective, because sometimes we do things and we do them just because we do them, and they're not effective. So think about what you are currently doing, and then more importantly, think about what else you could be doing, and how you bring other people into this world of trying to improve the education for African American, Black students, and understand that when we improve education for Black students, African American students, we're improving it for all students, okay? Let's keep that in mind. So we have an incredible panel here. I'm almost intimidated by them because they're the young folks. And they are the ones on whose shoulders eventually these students here will be standing on. So we're going to start out just thinking about what are the issues that have gotten us to this point where there has been a persistent problem with Black student, African American student achievement. So we're going to go down the row here, and we want this to be like a conversation. So I'm going to kick back like this, and I want each one of our panelists to share some of the burning issues that they're dealing with and that they think we all need to be aware of. And we know that we really want everybody to leave here thinking that you have been called to action. I'm laying the gauntlet right now. We're calling you to action. If I see you in 2 weeks, I'm going to say, what did you do? So let's start with, I'm going to start with Kali, because Kali is the one who actually called a city club and said, hey, we need to do something on Black student achievement. And fortunately, not only did she make the call, she is every day in the trenches doing something to address it. So, Kali.
Okay, good morning, or good afternoon, everyone. So one of the reasons why I felt this forum was important is because I'm seeing an alarming trend where we are not realizing Black students and Black children. I have the privilege of working in an atmosphere with young children, and we're forgetting that they're children. And I'm hearing adults, teachers, child care providers calling 4-year-olds violent. A Black boy who is 4 years old is not a violent individual. And when we yes. And I'm a mother of a Black son. I know that when we start changing the way we talk about children and we use criminalizing language as early as 3 and 4 years old, it's no wonder that we have disproportionate discipline of black children in preschool getting expelled. Black boys are expelled at 4 or 5 times higher rates right now. And it's because I believe we have forgotten who they are. We have forgotten that they're children. We're not seeing who they are. And that trend continues when I talk to folks at Kairos. We've had families that have come and have talked to us about experiences of their children in schools where sometimes their children are being taunted by other children and bullied, racialized bullying. There was one parent who told me her daughter, there were kids teasing her daughter saying they were going to lynch her. And when she went to administration, the response was something of the fact, well, kids can be kids, you know, they didn't mean it that way. But what does that do for that 7-year-old child when that's their experience in school? And so I feel like we set a trend that we see, and I have the opportunity to be at the higher education end, at the community colleges. We only have about 19% of students going on to post-secondary that are black and African American. There's a reason why. And it starts when you call a 3-year-old violent. So that is a big problem that I see. Thank you.
Joe McFerrin. Yeah, I'd like to focus and piggyback on that same issue around disproportionate expulsion and suspension. If you are an African American student in Multnomah County, you're more than 2 to 3 times more likely to be suspended or disciplined. And what's so sad about this data is that African American students in public schools, not only in the state of Oregon, but in other parts of the country, tend to get suspended or expelled for subjective reasons. Insubordination, unruly, disruptive. And as Kali talked about, that starts a trend. In our organization, we work with students who have had trouble in the public school system. We work with 6 school districts. We see the same issues for African American students in all these districts. So we're not here to single out any one particular district. But again, as an organization that works with kids that have lots of barriers, we also work with the juvenile justice system. And what you'll find in the data is that students who are disciplined at a high level in school are likely to end up in the criminal justice system. And I can tell you that it's true. The numbers are exactly the same. Disproportionate representation in the criminal justice system is very clear and easy to see when it comes to African Americans. As I pass it through, I think I have some solutions that I think could get at some of these issues, and it involves the entire village. And I'll end this segment with this, that this problem will not be addressed unless we all get on board and make it the top priority.
Thank you, Joe, Callie. I agree with everything that they've said so far. We know that disproportionate discipline is rampant throughout our nation, let alone our state. And so I agree with the things that we're dealing with, our students are dealing with. I want to thank City Club for asking me to be here to be able to speak for our students who I along with my colleagues, we long to make a path for them inside of the structure that we call public education today. So one of the things I want to just bump it up a little bit to talk about, what are we giving our students as we prepare them to go to college or careers? Do they have a college-ready diploma? When they leave high school, will they be able to go to any college if they choose? That's the first thing, is how are we leading them to get the mathematics that they need? Are they being pushed into courses where they're not getting the best mathematics that they need? Are counselors and guides guiding them in the direction they should go? This perpetuation of lack of expectations runs deep, and our structures that we currently have are producing what they're set up to produce. So in solution, I say call to action, as well as everyone who is here, we must work outside of the school as well as inside the school.
So as we listen to the many issues that negatively impact African American Black children, I want to piggyback on something that Lisa just said about everybody being engaged, no matter where you find yourself in this city, in this state. I know we have people from the Oregon Department of Education here. We have people from the city of Portland. We've got people from everywhere. And the challenge is for us to look at how do we collaborate and come together to provide the resources and the climate for children to be successful. Whether they're walking down the streets, whether they're in a facility, whether they are sitting in a classroom and the classroom is not meeting their needs. We need to step in. I'd like to ask Joe. I'd like to ask Joe. You deal with a population of students that frequently people just frankly don't want to deal with. So talk about what you need from people in this room, in this city.
Well, first of all, thank you for the question. The first thing that we need from everybody in this room, in the city, throughout this country is we need to believe in our kids. This is the bottom line. We need to believe in our kids.
Yes.
We have to understand that all kids can be successful if they're given the support that they need. And what we need is support. We need this to be a priority. To me, it bothers me, and I act pretty simple. Students out there, I'm sitting up here calm. I'm talking to the students right now. I'm sitting up here calm and collected, but this pisses me off. I'm pissed off, really, about what I see, and part of it is I'm a little disappointed in myself because I believe I can do better. But I will say this: I think number one, we got to believe in our kids, we got to invest in our kids, and we got to let them know that we got their backs and that we have very high expectations. And the last thing I'll say is when OIC, POIC, Rosemary Anderson, and some of the other community-based organizations knock on your door and ask you to help in any way, shape, or form, whether it's a donation, whether it's loan us a staff person to come in and help teach a class, or a job or internship opportunity, open your place of business up so that we can give our young students the kind of experiences that will lead to success that often they don't seem to get as often as some of the other kids in our community.
Thank you. Thank you. So I do want to say this, neglected to say it in the beginning. The City Club received a phone or some inquiries as to how do you define Black? And one of the reasons why we're being very intentional in saying African American / Black is we want to be inclusive of all the students in the diaspora. Those who have African descent, others from the Caribbean, And to show you how this operationalizes itself, I'm chair of the African American Black Student Success Plan for the Oregon Department of Education. And that particular project came about because several of us in the community said, we need to approach the legislature and ask that we get monies that are targeted, particularly for our students, for our children. And as we were working on this, and I think we've got about 12 grantees now. Markeisha, I know you're out there somewhere. Wave your hand up in the air, please. Is it 12? 9. Okay, that works. But at one point, you know, when we were crafting this legislation, we thought it was real important that people understood we weren't just talking about students who were born here in the United States who look like me. And so that's why we are saying African American / Black. We want to be inclusive because we know when we're talking about racially based interactions, people look at the color of the skin first. They don't ask whether you're from Ethiopia or Jamaica or South America. So that's, just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that. I need to do what is called a broadcast reminder. Hello to all of you out there in broadcast world. I'm Joyce Harris. I'm the moderator of the panel for the City Club on Black Student Achievement. And on the panel, I have Lisa Collins, Joe McFerrin, and Khalid Ladd. So that's just to remind you of what you're listening to in case you ended up on a dial and you say, what are these people talking about? I also want to ask one of our audience participants to stand up. Joy, where are you?
Hi there.
Oh, there you are.
Hey.
You wanted to ask a question, make a comment, or?
Yeah, my question was mentioned earlier, but so I work at PALF, the Portland African American Leadership Forum. We just recently released our report where we talked to nearly 500 African Americans and Black folks from North, Northeast, and folks who've been displaced in East Portland. And one topic kept coming up over and over again, like you mentioned, was the overcriminalization of our youth. So my question is, what are the policies, the programs, what can we do as Black adults, as Black youth, as our white allies and accomplices to support the work today? I want to know what we can do to get this moving.
I'm going to turn that to Khalid.
So I think one of the things you hinted about, Lisa, was that there are a lot of solutions that exist in community. There's actually research that says community-based solutions, particularly solutions that come from impacted communities, tend to be more effective than solutions that are placed upon the impacted communities. So that's research-based. So there are many organizations in this community, culturally specific organizations that serve the Black and African American community, POIC being one, KairosPDX being another, Self-Enhancement Inc. being another. We've got the Black Male Achievement Initiative, REAP. There are many organizations doing this work. Those organizations need to be valued and supported. And I'm talking particularly to all of you who represent education professionals, education establishment. We've talked about a system that has been built in a way that has not helped our children succeed and continues to hinder success. And so I believe it's only through partnership with some of these organizations that we really can begin to move the needle. And for those superintendents who have understood that and have decided, and principals that have understood that and have decided to partner, they have seen results. They have seen impact. One thing all of us have in common as Black and African American serving organizations is that we understand the relational way that we are. That's a cultural thing. We have a relational taxonomy. And so we build relationships. We understand families are important. We understand that families are first teachers. We're not intimidated by them. We're not discouraged by them. We include them. We say, have a conversation with us. We'll work with you. We believe in them as much as we believe in the children. And so those are the things that I believe are necessary if we are really going to begin to move the needle on what people feel with disproportionate discipline.
And I want to just add, how many of you have read the book, The New Jim Crow? You know, one of the most sobering passages in that book was when Michelle Alexander just stated that black children, particularly boys, are criminalized at birth. At birth. So they didn't create that criminalization. Other people have put that on them. And the behaviors that we see as they grow older, you know, back in the day we used to talk about tracking as an academic thing. You know, if you were a bluebird in kindergarten, when you were in 12th grade, you were still a bluebird. And what that meant, everybody in the school knew that you couldn't read that well. Well, now the criminalization has taken that over. And that's something that we want you all to all think about in your interactions with the students that you serve, the communities that you engage or don't engage with, and making sure that this thing we call the school to prison pipeline gets dismantled. And I'm also going to add, be very careful. I mean, we know that school resource officers do their jobs, but in some cases, for many children, that's where it begins. You're dealing with law enforcement. You can call them SROs or whatever you want to call them. It's the behaviors and the interactions that are so important. So just keep that thought in mind. I see people lining up over here, and we're not going to take the questions right now. But just hold your thoughts. The other thing that I think is important for us to talk about is engagement. Engagement with the communities that the children that we serve come from. Oh, thank you. So who want Lisa, you want to take that question?
Yes, I truly know that we can move the dial forward if we start engaging communities like we want people to engage us. And we have these partners, and I said, you mentioned a lot of partners, Callie, but I would mention Elevate Oregon, who works with PARKROSE, exclusively with PARKROSE, and with our families, that we not only have to help our partners, getting them is one part, but actually helping them to align with what the school district and the students and the families need when we ask the students and families is the other part. We have to bring them in side by side. Having the contract is one thing, but actually having them know what problems we have around attendance, what problems we're having when our students are said to, they need an IEP when they really don't need one. That's where we need administrators and school district people to stand side by side with families, side by side with families. And the engagement looks like, when I taught, I always ask my kids, who goes to church? And I was asking them, where is your community? Because I want to know where their community is. I don't get to judge where their community is, but I want to be side by side with them. And I miss the spirit that we have when we're able to talk one to another. Right. And that happens when we know where their communities are and when we are willing and open. And I'm just going to throw this out here. And we know, and the kids who are in this room know, that there are teachers who are afraid of our kids. And when our kids go to school and they go to classes, they have to deal with that. We have to talk about microaggressions, or there's not going to be any engagement.
Yes. Sure. This is a conversation. Go ahead.
I just want to say one thing off of that, and it's going to get a little nerdy, but so what neuroscience tells us in terms of how our brains work, when we have an adult that doesn't feel safe around kids, is intimidated, they act a certain way because our schema around what we believe about something dictates how we act towards that person. Absolutely. Now, on the reverse end, on the receiving end, when children know, when any human being knows that someone doesn't like them or is afraid of them, that creates stress. And for young people, especially young children, they don't feel safe. What happens to the brain when children don't feel safe is that it shuts down. So we put kids in environments where they're expected to learn, but the part of their brain that's responsible for learning has shut down because they're in classrooms where the teachers are not inviting them in to learn. So we actually have a neuroscientific impact. And I think, to me, that's why this is so important for us to get this. Because we can change it, but we need to change behavior. When children feel welcomed, when they feel seen and loved, that stimulates their brain activity. It actually stimulates the neural connections in their brain, and they learn better, faster, their memory is stronger. So we can change this, but we have to be actively trying to.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
And
then
so
can I say?
Yeah, go ahead.
And Kali, I'm so glad you hit that right on the head. And then what happens after those students get pushed through the system, because we have this thing called social promotion.
Yes.
You pass from the 3rd grade to the 4th grade to the 5th grade to the 6th grade to the 7th grade to the 8th grade, and then all of a sudden they're in the 9th grade and it's time to start dealing with graduation rates. And then when graduation rates come up, then I think what might happen, some of those kids end up in places like Rosemary Anderson High School. And I'm just thankful that we're there for those students. And what we have to do, imagine the magic that the staff, because I just sit up and run my mouth, but we have an outstanding team, what they have to do, because they're dealing with teenagers. First of all, they're teenagers. So just you take all that, a well-supported teenager is trouble enough. I mean, I'm just not trouble, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Y'all know what I'm talking about. But then think about a teenager that has been traumatized by the system that's supposed to be there to support them around adults that are supposed to care for them. So what we have to do at Rosemary Anderson High School and other schools like ours is we have to work extremely hard just to earn their trust so that they will begin to open up, begin to heal, and begin to get on a track towards self-sufficiency and looking for ways to fulfill their full potential.
Okay, so I'm going to follow up on that because what you've just talked about has also to do with expectations. And I am going to publicly say this. I get a little disturbed when I hear that we are going to have kids reading by 3rd grade. Because kids need to be reading before 3rd grade.
We know that.
I proudly said that I taught little Joe how to read. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say little Joe. I love this brother because when he was 5 years old, he was in kindergarten. He was reading. Way to go, little Joe. I'm sorry, Joe McFair, Mr. Joe. I'm called Mr. Joe. But he was reading at 5 years old. All of the children who attended the Black Educational Center, by December of their kindergarten year, they were reading. 6 Ducks on a Pond, Hen in a Fox's Den. I mean, these children could read those books. We didn't wait until they were 7 or 8 years old. So I'm hoping that everybody takes that to heart. We need to have high expectations for our students and our teachers. So y'all chew on that. What about the expectations? How do we create the environments where children can academically be successful? And that is the expectation. That is the bar. Lisa.
I would say that there are some amazing educators that are in this room today. And those are people who fight for our children, and they're people who do the right thing. So do the right thing sometimes is hard. If you have a teacher that's not really teaching students, or I've heard many war stories throughout the years, We're not going to put kids in that classroom because we know how the teacher is. We have people here who stand up and fight for our kids, but I'm going to say the system is set to do exactly what it's doing, because the people who do that, they get beaten down and then they get tired. We really need to revamp what we expect people to do. And I've been doing this for a long time. I am convinced that my best job is to work with outside partners so that they know what we're doing inside to help me with the kids, and then to continue to work on the system.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, let's go back to what people in this room can do. What would be your one call to action for people in this room? Joe has one. One?
I have one. I have one, and I thought about this before I came here today. It's math. Math is a barrier for our students going to college and for careers. It's math. However we can engage kids in math inside or outside school, come see me. I have a few ideas. I think it's math.
Okay. Okay, we got to make this quick because now I have to go to Q&A.
I just have one for the students, Black and African American students. Just understand what you're up against, take the challenge, and you will be successful.
I mean, I've said it a few different times, but I think believing in the students and knowing that they're brilliant and capable and they're our next generation of leaders. Students, you need to believe that. Teachers, you need to believe that. All the adults need to see our children and see their brilliance and know and live into that.
Okay, so now we're at the part of the program where we are going to open it up for questions and answers. And as you can see, we have some young people lined up, and part of my charge, no age discrimination here, but the first questioner had to be a young person. So when you come to the mic, and we don't have a lot of time, so no speeches, no sermons, just a quick question. Can you do that for me?
I'll do my best.
No, don't try your best. You didn't hear what we just said up here. Okay, ask us a question. Tell us who you are and what school you're from.
Good evening. My name is Tosha Kitungano. I was born in Tanzania, and I am here with Roosevelt. Today, I don't have a question, but I do have a solution. I want to read it. My heart is where I want teachers, educators, staff, security people, anyone that interacts with young people, they need to be trauma informed. They need to know how to interact with students. They need to know how to build relationship with the students, to increase graduation rates, and just increase confidence within the students. Because at this stage, we are at a stage where we're discovering ourselves. And if we don't have someone believing in us, it's tough. It really is.
Thank you.
One more thing. I and my other classmates and one of our teachers, Miss Renee, we already started a movement. It's called the I Am More Project, and it stands for Making Other Resiliency Experiences. We are here to stand up and rise against any stereotype. We're here to move forward and tap into our passions. I encourage every staff member that is in here, any educator, I believe that you all are capable of moving the environment within the rooms.
Okay.
Trauma-informed needs to be talked about. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. Next question.
Hi, my name is Justice Serenity English. I'm also from Roosevelt High School. She kind of took what I was going to say, but me, her, and another student did beat the odd scholarship and won a $16,000 scholarship, and that's where it came founded from. We had experience of trauma, and my question is, what has the public education system done to teach all the staff and everybody who works with kids to be more trauma-informed on kids of color?
Good question. Anybody? Lisa?
Good question. And so I just have to get just a little political context here, because trauma-informed came from the new health, Obamacare, and that changed what the mental health and the substance abuse, their framework. So we have words called trauma-informed. We need to know exactly what that means for us. What are schools doing? Schools, COSA has had four trainings. Personally, what I would like to see is I would like to see smaller trainings with people being who they authentically are, and so that adults can see where their trauma is impacting our kids. That's what I would like to see.
Okay.
Well, and
Thank you. Got to move on.
one quick thing on trauma-informed. It's very important. There's a lot of people talking trauma-informed right now, and those folks are often not culturally responsive. The system that causes the trauma can't be the only system that is teaching about trauma-informed care. And so we really need to ensure that those are linked, culturally responsive and trauma-informed.
Next question, and please, we need to quit because we don't have a lot of time.
Hi, my name is Kiyoshi Owens. I'm the CEO of Empress Rules. We do equity facilitation. One term that was not used during the duration of this segment, first let me just say I appreciate y'all and all the work that you're doing, because you don't have to be doing it and you're doing it. So I just want to say thank you. I see y'all in the community and I appreciate you. One term that was not used was white supremacy, which if we don't understand the historical context of white supremacy and why white people cannot see our children as being humans, because Callie, what I heard you say is, why aren't we treating kids like human kids? Because they can't see them as human kids. And so my question is what is the responsibility of white teachers, right? Because those are the ones who are teaching our kids until we do whatever we need to do to raise up some teachers of colors. Like, where's the investment in that? But what is the responsibility of white teachers to inform themselves about why they're having trouble seeing people who look like my babies, Tosha and Justice, as being the brilliant, beautiful, amazing, existential people that they are? And so what's their responsibility, and what's your antidote for that symptom of white supremacy?
Okay.
There is no antidote for that.
Lisa?
There is no antidote for that, and I think you know that, right? And we are in Oregon, and we know the history of Oregon, right? So personally, I believe that the city needs to heal, and we need to heal at a deep level to put this on the table. Anytime we put this on the table, everybody runs and runs away. I don't want to talk about it. It's not me. It's not me. But I think that we can, in community, we can work together. Coming to the table does that. That's one way, and I think anyone in here, once we start, I think we can do it.
And I just want to add one thing to that. We are in a climate now where we all have to be accountable. We have to speak up. We've got to stand up when we see anything that marginalizes any of us, adults, children, based on how we present ourselves racially, culturally, and in all the other ways that people are being beat down. So, that would be my response. There's a lot of work to be done. I mean, so much work to be done. And we all have to figure out how we engage. Sometimes we must be those who hold people accountable. Sometimes we have to be the protectors. Sometimes we have to be the influencers. We have to be all of that. Next.
Good evening. My name is Oscar. I go to Roosevelt High School. One of my questions is, why, as students, why don't we have teachers with the same color as skin to understand us what we're going through?
I don't know that I can directly answer this question. As Mr. Herndon said, though, we see a decrease in the number of black teachers and teachers of, well, I don't know about all teachers of color, black teachers and African American teachers in the system. I know that there is a program, the Portland Teachers Program, that has intentionally trained black and teachers of color, and it's housed at Portland Community College. But that program, I've talked with teachers who have taught, and they have talked about the hostility and isolation they feel when they go into some of our schools and try to teach. And so when you don't allow the teachers to be welcome who are trying to do this tough work, the teachers of color, they don't stay. And so we need to make sure that our all teachers, teaching is hard. I was trained to be a teacher. I started my career as a teacher. The profession is hard. We don't fund it enough. We don't give teachers the resources they need. That's a fact. But when we intentionally isolate, or maybe unintentionally, subconsciously isolate our teachers of color when they are trying to push for things, and we push back, when they're the one teacher of color in that building, we don't create the space for them to want to stay. And I would welcome, if there are teachers in the room, are there any black teachers in this room? Yeah, I would love for you. I encourage you to talk to them and hear their story and hear their voice. I think we collectively do need to have more diversity in our teaching force.
Okay, I want to ask a question. The people who are online, how many of you from Roosevelt? Okay, good. I mean, I didn't mean it like that, but you're at the end of the line. No. Next question.
So that was right on time because I am the only black teacher in my building. So I would like to offer a solution, and that would be more training, culturally responsive training for teachers, because a lot of these teachers just say things off the fly that are completely inappropriate. Not only teachers, but also counselors. Counselors are constantly recommending community college to 3.8 and 4.0 African American students, and it's just not okay.
Thank you.
So one training that I did attend, I've attended multiple trainings, and a training that I did attend was Teaching with Purpose. That training is run by someone directly from the community, and if we're talking about solutions that come from the community, I would love to see that in the African American Success Plan that you guys have. I'm pretty sure you guys have heard of this conference, but that's a conference where they train teachers on how to be more culturally responsive, to unpack bias and things like that, and that is what we need more of, because a lot of these teachers don't even recognize that they have a bias. I had a teacher tell me one time that black girls just agitate her and she doesn't know why. And it's a teacher that I work with in my building, and we have programs like the Black Student Union and Black Girl Magic at our school, but we are constantly pushing out our black students. And if we have a teacher who will openly say, black girls just agitate me and I don't know why, and then she's constantly kicking them out of the classroom and things like that, we obviously have a problem, and teachers need more training.
Okay, thank you. I need to just say, I just got the cue card. This is the last question. So, go ahead.
I'm Deasia Kennedy from Benson High School, and I feel schools need more culturally responsive curriculum, such as teaching African history before teaching African American history, such as chattel slavery, and teaching things like Black Wall Street in our schools.
Mm-hmm.
And
okay, I think that stands on itself. What you just said about teaching more African American history. So thank you for that recommendation. And I know I'm going to take one more because I want a little gender balance in this Q&A. Young man, thank you.
Right. Hi, my name is Peter Anthony Perdisic. I go to Cleveland and I'm the student body president there.
All right. All right.
And my question was, since I got in here, I was wondering what I can do, like what are things that an African American teenager can do in the like student government and just in general around this, like the whole like school vibe and stuff.
I would respond to that quickly. I think the first thing that someone like you, and obviously you're a leader, is that you can galvanize African American and black students, and you guys set the bar for yourselves, okay? And then you guys hold each other accountable to be the best that you can possibly be, not only for yourselves, but for your family and the young brothers and sisters coming up behind you.
All right, right. And I think the fact that you're in a position now at your school speaks volumes in terms of what you can do as a student. So I want to thank everybody, and he's going to hit me on the head in a minute. Want to thank everybody for being here, and let's continue this conversation. It's really important. City Club, communities, schools, we got higher ed here. Let's continue the conversation.
Every week I have to cut a conversation short, and this is harder than most weeks. Thank you. Please join me in giving a huge round of applause to all of our panelists. Thank you.